Welcome viewers, welcome back to this course on sustainable development, sustainable leadership. In the last class we were discussing about lean leadership and how to map the sustainable leadership efficacy, how to map the sustainable leaderships and how to make the organizations more sustainable. So, we can say we have already discussed about some of the principles and the practices of sustainable leadership pyramid. So, now to continue with that, now let us discuss further about how to become a successful leader. We have already discussed about so many traits, personality attributes, traits, skills, competencies of sustainable leadership. We have already discussed a lot. So, becoming a sustainable leader, as you can see, these things, these 5 things are very important. I think we have already discussed earlier systems thinking, how holistically what is the holistic perspective approach of the sustainable leader. So, the sustainable leader always thinks in terms of the holistic framework, like in terms of system, in terms of interconnectedness of this every unit. So, he is having a larger vision of a whole of the whole community, having the broader picture of the whole system, and he also try to interconnect and and find out the interrelationship of each attribute, each unit with other things. So, what is the systems thinking, having the larger perspective, holistic perspective. Second is that external collaboration. So, beyond the organization, what is the networking, what is the collaboration, what is the liaisoning of the leaders to with other organizations, with other leaders, other experts and the other can say eminent persons and the reputed organizations and the business people. Then third is the social innovations. Again, whatever organizations, whatever business they are doing, irrespective of that, if the leaders, they always look for the social sustainability, social innovation, or how their services and the products are going to benefit the community and the society. So, what is their approach towards the social innovation, that is another important attribute of the sustainable leadership. Then again, fourth dimension, sustainability leaders, sustainability literacy. Sustainability literacy in the sense that how literate they are in sustainability in the thing that that means they are not just focusing on the process and the product and outcomes, but also they are focusing, that means they have a paradigm of sustainability in their bent of mind, in their approach, in their living style, in their consumptions. So, that is called the literacy. That means in every moment, in every action, in every thought, in every step, in every activity and planning, they always think for the sustainability. So, even if they do a very small thing, very tiny thing, when very small do a small work also, they always put that sustainability approach. That means how sustainability, how efficiently it can be done. So, does not matter the only in terms of the larger goals, and it has to be sustainable, but sustainability literacy is that how sustainability approach is there in their mindset, in their lifestyle, in their consumption, in their behavior, in their thought process, in their actions. So, that is the sustainability literacy, how literate they are in sustainability knowledge domain. Then active values, and how again what are the active values, or you can say the effects, the values are being added to not just to their own life, their community life, their organizations, but also to the society. So, to the society and to the environment. So, active values that they contribute towards the economic growth of the country, of the nation, of the that means maybe that across the globe, all countries. Then what are the again values, sustainable values towards the ecosystem, towards the environment, towards the resources, towards the conservation of resources, towards the community well-being, etc., towards the people, towards the environment and towards the economy. So, the active values, they contribute towards the economic structure, economic growth of the country, towards the environment, environmental resources, conservation of resources, environment protection, especially taking care of the carbon footprint and the climate change and the pollution and the waste management, etc., and towards the improving the enhancing the status or quality of life of the community or the stakeholders of the people of the, that is the society. So, these are some of the, these are the 5 principles how to become, that means if an individual, a particular leader, they aims to leaders, they aim to become the sustainable leaders, then they have to look into these 5 points, 5 principles of sustainable leadership. So, these are, you can say, these are narrated here only, these are narrated explained here only. So, now some of the traits, of the sustainable leadership is like, we have already discussed about this. We can say so this is a framework, again we can say system and holistic thinking is already there. Then the one end, second the collaborative approach, their long term objectives. They have both the planning for the short term goals, long term goals, and again objectives, how the goals can be converted into objectives and time bound objectives, and planning, then the strategic planning and approach, etc. So, they are highly adaptive in the sense that they can manage even manage risks also very effectively. So, risk management is very high, they are quite adaptable to the market, flexibility, market changes, vulnerability of the market, cultural factors, social factors, communication factors, transport factors. So, highly adaptive organizations, highly adaptable leaders. Then they are conscious of the recent trends of the green market. Now, everything now everywhere in every organizations they are going for the greener approach, green market, green products, even in the agriculture also it is more of organic food products. So, green markets in terms of the that is the minimum carbon footprints, and going more in terms of online platform, in terms of digital platform, and to to emit minimum carbon. So, minimum carbon emissions, and the try to neutralize, rather the carbon neutrality, neutralize the carbon emissions, etc. Study going for the green market, green jobs, green economy, green you can say green products, green packaging also, all kinds of things. So, they must be very much up to date in terms of these green aspects, greenery aspects, or how to minimize minimize the waste, industrial waste, organizational waste. So, they must be very much conscious of and up to date, must keep themselves up to date in these recent trends. Then search for the wellness, and ultimately towards the well-being and wellness of not just the immediate community, but the society at large. From the they can think of the global society, the humanity in large. So, these are the some of the traits they are supposed to nurture, that is caring and morally driven. They must be very much ethical, honesty, trustworthiness should be there in their action, their relationship, systemic and holistic thinker. They must be very much open minded in welcoming the new ideas. They are very empathetic, emotionally empathetic and self aware. They are very much aware of whatever they are doing and their justification for their own behavior. So, they must they must behave, whatever they are saying, they are speaking, they are talking, they are advocating, they must themselves practice it. So, they are the, yes, of course, they are supposed to be the visionary leaders. They are very tenacious, very hardworking, courageous, risk takers also, but risk takers, they are also concerned for the equality, justice, and they are also more they should be committed towards human rights and equality, equality, justice, etc. And they must also again respect the diversity in different ways of working, culture, cultural practices, experience, etc. They must have this open mindset to welcome diversity. They must have the passion for the sustainability and commitment towards the sustainable lifestyle, not just they maintain in their own life, but also persuade, motivate others, everybody, every stranger, every worker, every employee of their organizations to adopt the sustainable lifestyle. They must motivate them. So, these are some of their traits, personality traits, to make them, you can say they are very much, you can say they are very much passionate about sustainability. So, when you become more passionate, very dedicated and committed towards that, automatically, knowingly, unknowingly, consciously and unconsciously, we adopt that kind of behavior, that kind of mindset, and automatically we are tempted towards that kind of behavior. So, their style of working is like they are very inclusive, engaging. Yes, they always look for the positive attributes, positive aspects of, even though in the work environment it is very difficult to manage people, different people, people with their different needs, their backgrounds, experiences and temperaments, etc. It is very difficult to manage people, but still they always look for how to engage people in with looking at their strengths and weaknesses, how to engage people, employee engagement, workers engagement, and how to build a inclusive environment, work environment, inclusive work culture, that is also important. Collaborative in their approach, consensual decision making. Even though he is a leader, he should not take the drastic dictator type decisions. They have to they have to adopt a democratic process of taking an opinion of every employee, every stakeholder, even from the grassroots level also, sometimes from the stakeholders also, so taking the opinion and views and the needs of needs and ideas and thoughts of every stakeholder, every individual, every employee. So after long arguments, debates, you can say, having the discussions, debates, dialogue, etc., then they take the consensual decision, which will be, you can say, it will be beneficial to everybody. So, and empowering and trusting, again, leadership is not there for achieving only the goals for the organizations and for the business unit, but also empowering others, educating and nurturing others, enabling others. So, HR training also, giving the training, then fulfilling their the career needs, the skill development of the skills and competencies of each and every employee, and that is also that is very important aspect. And again, trusting, building that trust in the environment. So, mutual trust is a very important factor, and it takes time to develop the trust, but if this trusting relationship, trusted bond has been developed, means then it will be smooth and very smooth and progressive and positive to work to move forward. So, how to empower the people and building the trusting relationship among each other, it is not just about employee-employer relationship, but it is about everybody, one to one, every all team members, all intra and inter and all intergroup relationships. So, then visionary and creative, yes, definitely they must be not only just up to date and visionary, but also they themselves are very creative. They also promote creativity. They themselves want to, they should be innovative and always welcome the new ideas, new thoughts, new strategies, etc. So, for that also they have to keep on learning, keep on learning, and also update them through collaborating, through networking, through through learning and educating themselves also. So, visionary and creativity, and altruistic. So that means guiding and helping others without any direct personal goal. So, ultimate goal here is to improve the society, improve the community for the welfare of the others. So, here by altruistic attitude, attitude gives them a kind of pleasure. It's a kind of, is called the eudaimonic happiness. That means they are the leaders, they are serving, they are working for the benefit of others. So, they look beyond their own interests, they look beyond their benefits. They do not think about their benefits and the what they are getting it, but they think of educating, empowering others, improving the quality of others, bringing the qualitative change in the community. So, ultimate goal, their ultimate goal is to not just to bring or enhance their brand image or reputation of their organizations, but the well-being of all their employees, well-being of the community, well-being of the people, well-being of the society at large. So, here you can say this kind of leadership can be a type of, you can say, servant leadership. That means the leader is at the service of everybody. So, transcending the self-interest to serve the needs of others. So, it is a kind of, you can say, the servant leadership, in the sense that the leader is ready to serve others. So, which that is transcending, when that is bringing, that means transcending from self-interest to serve the people's interest, need of the others. That is the servant relationship. Radical, that means he is very adaptable, very radical, very democratic to bring any kind of change. If it is scientifically proven, it is effective. So, he is very radical. Basically, but it is not radical, that means he is quite adaptable, quite adjustive, quite innovative in bringing change and modification in the organizations and the practices. So, now here you can say, with regards to skills also, we can see skills, as you can say, the skills, definitely the performance skills, sustainability performance and communications for the for different kinds of organizations. SDGs also will help the drive improvements to all kinds of organizations. It's definitely good communication skill, good performance, good communication with poor performance. So, here in the quadrant we can see how this communication and performance can interact with each other and end up in being being what. So, here you can say 4 quadrants. So, SDGs are there everywhere in the process. So, suppose in one aspect domain it is communication, another is the performance, sustainable communication, sustainability in the communication and sustainability in the performance. If these 2 parameters are there, here you can see from the poor to the higher to the good. So, we suppose somebody is very good in communication, but performance is poor, then you can say greenwashing, that means the it is a superficial kind of thing, where poor communication, poor performance, definitely they are in the dark side, they are in the loser, they are in the dark side. Then again another is the poor communication with good performance. The stakeholders are under informed, that means you are doing well, but nobody is being aware of it, nobody is knowing it, nobody is well informed about this what you are doing. So, good communication along with the good performance, good communication is very important, that is publicity, advocacy, publicity, these are very important. So, good communication with good performance can lead towards the sustainable leadership and positive reputation. Whatever good thing you are doing, you should display it, you should communicate it, you should make publicity of this. So, good communication, good performance, then only it can help in achieving the SDGs. So, here the skills required are, yes, definitely how the leaders they manage the complexity and unpredictability, the risks, the emergencies, how they address the emergencies. So, the communication is very important in the sense during the crisis, how do you communicate, how do you manage, because without, suppose just take the example of any kind of natural disaster or any kind of industrial disaster or any kind of any kind of disaster or even you can take the pandemic. So, during these emergencies, how the organizations they manage, in pandemic you can say some of the most of the industrial organizations, small business centers, they have been closed off. So, the employees they are unemployed, they are out of their jobs, they were not getting the payment. So, their lives their living their life has become hell, etc. But again, what the major steps the organizations has taken to to compensate, to retain, to think about the survival of their employees and the workers, etc. So, what measures they have taken. So, that is again the skills and competencies to manage this complexity, unpredictable situations, that to bridge the disciplines and the sectors alongwise, bridge the disciplines and the sectors, manage the centers, communicative visions, how do they manage the not just the 24/7 communication, work communication and the other kinds of formal and informal communication within the organizations, but with the external agencies and especially during the crisis period, or any kind of disaster, any kind of maybe that some kind of you can say risk factor, like suppose some damage, some failure in the market, maybe because of the poor quality, or some kind of setback they face in the market because of the some kind of disasters, maybe in their quality in the product or in whatever. So, how do they manage this kind of situation, how do they communicate during the crisis with the stakeholders, with the customers, and how do they recover it, how do they exhibit their how their ethical standard, you can say the ethical standard, and how whether they accept their fault or not, how they compensate it, all these kind of thing. Then exercise the judgment, judgment again, yes, of course the companies, the organizations from their communications, from their spokespersons statements, how do they that means they justify themselves, their actions, their deeds, their ethical standards, their quality. So, that is their then challenge and innovative challenges, and they are very skills in facing the challenges, being innovative. Staff and team management, that we have already discussed, managing diversity and think and plan for the long term future. So, these are the skills and competencies required. Then another is the knowledge domain. Yes, knowledge domain, there is competency in the different competencies and expertise in different domain relevant things, maybe production, maybe in manufacturing, maybe in marketing, maybe in technology, etc. So, relevant to the which domains are very much relevant to the organization goals and purposes, and what is their competence in that domain, that manpower, competent manpower in that domain. Then again awareness of ecological, economic, political, cultural, community context, in which cultural context, community context, political context and economic context and ecological context you are running the business, you are doing the, you are setting up the organization and running the business. So, global challenges, what are the global challenges that you are facing or your organization is facing, what are the dilemmas are there, social dilemmas, economic, financial dilemmas, market dilemmas, what are the dilemmas and conflicts that exist, interdisciplinary connectedness, each domain how interconnected it is with other domains, even within the same organizations and across the organization, the change dynamics and the options, that is change dynamics, like maybe change in the packaging, change in the product, change in the technology. So, how quick and prompt you and your organization is there to adopt that change, to accept that change, how dynamic you are in adopting that change and quickly update yourself in the marketplace. That means to restore, to enhance your brand image, okay, quickly adaptable, adaptable and sustainable. Then organizational influences and impacts, that means at the end of the day, end of the year, end of the month, what are the outputs, what are the impacts of your organization, your activities, etc., on the society, on the economy and the environment. So, these are the three drivers of sustainability. So, organizational influences and impacts in terms of economical growth, in terms of in economic market, in maybe that giving employment, job opportunity, enhancing the purchasing power or quality of life of the people. That means you are enhancing the economic power of the people, financial power of the people. So, economic growth here. So, that is your impacts, organization's impacts are positive in terms of financial growth. Second is that yes, whatever you are doing, you are taking care of the environment, ecosystem, conserving the resources and protecting it, nurturing it in terms of more plantation, more clean products, green products, etc. Then another is for the people, how can we how your organizations, your works, products, etc., can improve the quality of life of the people and their well-being. Okay. So, similarly awareness of the stakeholders role and diverse stakeholders views, these are some of the information, the knowledge, the data then should be there. And again organization, every organization, not just they have the domain knowledge and core domain knowledge and skills and competencies, but they how do they nurture it, create the knowledge, how do they store it, how do they maintain it, how do they disseminate it, how they share it, and how they process the whole thing. That means how they have developed their knowledge management system and how efficiently and effectively it is managing all kinds of both tacit knowledge, explicit knowledge, process related knowledge, product knowledge. So, because nowadays in the present context, post globalization context, knowledge is again is a property. So, how do you manage, how your organization manage this knowledge as the property and exercise it effectively, usefully, and keep it as the patent and you can say as a power, as a property for future use. So, next you can see yes, internal leadership actions. So, within the organization, leadership actions like yes, of course, it is related to organizational culture, how much strategic direction, informed decision that you take, even some governance. Its governance is also governance structure, depends on the hierarchy, the portfolios, the how horizontal and vertical structures that you have, that your organization is based on, role of leadership is there, teamwork, management incentives, compensations, then performance accountability, performance appraisal, people's empowerment and learning and innovation. These are all internal leadership action. That means within the organization, the leadership actions and activities should be referred to, should be related to these activities. And external leadership action is that yes, cross sector partnership, cross organization partnership, global partnership, then with regard to sustainable products and services, with regard to sustainability awareness, empowerment, training, development, then context transformation, stakeholder transparency. So, these are the leadership actions activities towards the beyond, that means towards the external society, external stakeholders, that means beyond your own organizations, that is cross sector partnership, global partnership, irrespective of context, irrespective of your product and stakeholders. So, beyond your own organization, the transparency, the awareness, the products, the service, partnership, everything. So, then leadership practices are like yes, commitment to training and staff development program, then productively striving for amicable labor relationships, strategic staff retention, talent management, promoting environmental social responsibilities, developing and embedding a shared vision of the goals for the vision, all kinds of the goals and objectives, both related to social, economic and environmental. And then habits is, yes, definitely sustainable habits in terms of taking the long term perspective in making decisions, fostering the systematic innovation, and enhancing the giving more priority to customer satisfaction, values, customer needs, customer feedback, then developing a skilled and loyal, highly engaged workforce, quality of products, services and solutions, then developing and maintaining the trust of organizational members. That means building a a robust ethical standard and moral principles of the organizations, of work practices, commitment and engagement with the ethical behavior, decision making, and maintaining that ethical standard, quality of the products, services stand throughout the organization and across the organizations. So, that is it, because these practices, leadership practices, habits and skills, competencies, ultimately it results into the reputation, the brand image of the company. So, again this is again a framework for sustainable services. As you can see, sustainable services in terms of your yes, implementation services in terms of technology, engineering services, again business intelligence, consulting services. These are different actions, different units of actions. You can say actions, these are the actions and the practices and the services that you use, and then the outcomes, actions, services and the outcomes. As you can see, from here in terms of actions like the measurement and reporting with regard to carbon emission, natural resource consumptions, toxicity, health, safety, waste management, all kinds of things. Then the second is that how do you optimize the resource utilizations, like monitoring and control of optimizing the resource utilizations, carbon emissions, then the carbon credits, all kinds of these monitoring and control actions. Then another analyzing and mitigating the risk factors, like like how to recycle the things, how to reduce the waste, reduce the resource consumption, toxic substance emissions and use of alternative energy, clean energy, SNCS technology, all these kind of analyzing, mitigating the challenges. Then abatement measures, sustainable material, process alternative, sustainable product index parameters. These are the actions. And sustainability in the services in terms of your consultancy services, in terms of your business intelligence services, in terms of engineering services, in terms of ICT based or technology implementation services. These are the services. And the outcomes can be how do you optimize your consumption, how do you redesign your business process and technology, how do you sustainable product indexed, how do you optimize the ecological footprint, again how the sustainability program roadmap that leveraging the ecosystems. Then again the force, how do you enforce the PPP projects, the people public participation, public private participations, PPP model, that is the projects, PPP projects in investments of sustainable technology, leveraging the benefits of government subsidies, etc. Public private partnership, these are the outcomes. And in terms here you can say drivers are, you can say the drivers for integrating the sustainability business operations are, you can say, who are the investors, who are the customers, they are one driver. Regulatory mechanism organizations, that is another, and the voluntary organizations who are volunteering them in terms of social accountabilities, healthy safety, etc., and voluntary activities. Then regulatory actions in terms of sustainability targets, product governance, etc., and investors, society and the customers in terms of opportunities, innovation, shareholder responsibilities, all these things. So, these are the drivers of integrating sustainability in your business strategy, and these are the business benefits, the triple bottom line performance leadership, like the business benefits, triple bottom line performance leadership, like compliance to the regulations and responsibility, social accountability, visibility and transparency to the business governance and risk management strategies, and another is increasing competitiveness in terms of brand, trust and reputation of the company, resource optimization and repositioning with updating the companies and your technology with more clean technology, more sustainable products and more eco-friendly things. So, this is I can say the framework of sustainability action plan, performance and the outcomes. So, every organization can follow these guidelines and take the reference of these framework to run their business, to manage their activities. So, I am completing it right now here, I am stopping it right now. So, next class we will discuss with other aspects. Thank you very much.